What a messed up part of history, right? I think that episode is very fittingly titled "Why We Fight." And that kind of sums it up at the end of the war. When you think about it, like a lot of soldiers do question when they're in conflicts, why are we over here? Why am I leaving my family? Why am I putting my life on the line? I don't think anything could ever sum it up or give you a better reason than stumbling into a camp like that and seeing the absolute horrific and awful things that the Nazi regime did. And it really does justify, I think, in their minds and in America's minds and the world's minds, why we did fight this war. So remember, most of these guys had no idea that this was playing out. They thought Hitler was a bad guy and evil and rotten in so many other ways. But this really cements it in their head. And think about going through something like that, going into a camp like that, how that would scar you and impact you the rest of your life. Now, my grandpa was fighting at the same time, basically from D-Day on through to the end of the war. But he was not in the 101st Airborne. He wasn't a paratrooper, and he never actually had the experience of going into a camp, which honestly, for my grandpa's sake, I'm kind of happy that that didn't happen, because I think that really would mess guys up and screw with your head. How could it not? Now, a couple things that I think I should mention and point out as after you've watched that scene, there's the scene where they discover what's happening and they immediately try to get food, water, medical supplies out there to them. And there's a language barrier. Most of the people that were in Dachau, they either spoke German or Polish. And then the American soldiers, of course, we were speaking American English. So definitely a language barrier. There were a few American soldiers that could speak German and that were trying their best to translate. But once they piece it together, and at first they don't understand why these guys are there. They think that they maybe were criminals or murderers or rapists, but then they realize pretty quickly that that was not the case. Their crime was being Jews or being dissenters of the Nazi regime and speaking out against Hitler. So the immediate reaction of our soldiers is, and this is true, this happened time and time again when the Russians liberated a lot of the worst camps like Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. The British had liberated another camp in northern Germany. Really, all of the Allied soldiers, no matter which army they were from, their initial reaction is, my God, let's get these guys food. And like you saw that one scene where they go into the bakery at the little local German town, and they're stealing all the food, or you know what I mean, taking it all out there to give it to the people in the camp. And that baker guy flips out, and the one guy, he uses a few choice words, but he pulls his pistol out and says, "You knew about it." And he's like, "I don't know. What do you?" That brings up a very interesting dilemma too. That think about it. After this, America, Russia, all the Allied powers, the British, even a lot of people in Germany and in occupied Europe, they want justice and they want to punish the people that are responsible for this. But it becomes a really big dilemma that, Hitler's responsible for it and the guys that are in his inner circle and the high ranking Nazi officials. But how many other Germans knew that this stuff was playing out? Definitely somebody in that local German town knew about it, because somebody came and tipped the German guards off that morning and got them out of there before the Allied soldiers could catch them. But did everybody know about it? Well, no. I mean, Hitler didn't promote this or put it in the newspapers or the propaganda. So a lot of people probably, they knew Jewish people had kind of disappeared, or something was going on, but they had no idea to what extent. So it really becomes a problem after the war, trying to sort out who are the guilty Germans that are responsible for this and enabled it, and who are the ones that just got caught up in the mix and really knew nothing about it, and are kind of blameless in terms of the Holocaust. That's a problem that it was wrestled with for decades after the war. And literally, on to the time I was in high school in the 90s, they were still tracking down information and trying occasionally Nazi war criminals. Now, my next thing, they went to the bakery and they were taking all that bread. The initial reaction is from all the Allied soldiers, we need to get these people food. We need to get them fed. And they start to do that, and they go bring them out as much food, and they're these people that have been in the camp for extended periods of time, and they essentially look like zombies. They're skin and bones, man. You can see their ribs, and they start eating as much as they can and just packing their faces full because, of course, you would. You're a starving person. Now, you might not know this because, hunger or extreme malnutrition isn't really a problem that we face in America today. But when you are down to an absolute like starvation diet and like a couple hundred calories a day for an extended period of time, your body adjusts and goes into starvation mode. And then if all of a sudden one day after months and months of starvation, you eat as much as you want. You're sitting there eating a whole cake with frosting, or you know what I mean, eating loaves of bread. Your body can go into insulin shock and actually die. It's like your insulin levels, the sugar in your blood, will go through the roof, and your body's not ready for that and equipped. So actually, through no fault of their own, but some of these Allied soldiers end up being responsible for some of these people that were in the camp for like killing them. Again, not because they were trying to do that. They were trying to do a good thing, but they give them all the food. They give them their ration packs, and it spikes their insulin levels. And they realize pretty early on, once they start getting doctors in there, that, hey, we can't do that. So I think that's one of the most heartbreaking things, too, that you saw that scene there where these Jews coming out of the camp feel like they've been rescued, and like, finally we made it through it. I can't believe, what's going through their mind. They can't believe that they survived this whole ordeal. And then all of a sudden the American soldiers, these other guys in uniforms that they've never seen before and speak a different language, round them back up and put them in the camp. Think about that experience. I guess they get into it a little bit in the episode, but when you hear the guys that were actually there talk about it, man, it's heartbreaking. Like, it broke their heart to do that, because in the Jews' minds that were there, they think they're getting locked up again. That, like, it was they almost made it, but then they didn't, and then these soldiers are turning on them. Now, that wasn't the case. They're doing that for their own good, because they didn't want them to scatter out into the woods and run away. They wanted to get them corralled in there for just a few more hours, until they could get doctors, nurses, and everybody else there, so that they could monitor the food that they're intaking and slowly start to nurse them back to health. But man, what a heartbreaking thing. Now, I think one of the best decisions that our top general, Eisenhower, who later is going to become a president in the 1950s, one of the best decisions he ever made was when they come across these camps and word gets back to him, and they start telling him in vivid and gory details what these camps are like. The initial reaction is a lot of the officers wanted to just burn these places down. They wanted to bury them up with bulldozers and just, you know what I mean? Forget about it. And I could see like why you would think to do that. But he says, no, before any of that can happen, before we burn down any of these camps, before we tear them down, dismantle them, we're going to send in photographers and we're going to document everything. And that's why today there are so many Holocaust pictures out there. It was because General Eisenhower showed some restraint there, and he said, I don't want anybody ever in the future to be able to deny that this took place. So he wanted that to be absolutely, as perfectly documented as we could. And that's probably for the best, because even despite having all that evidence, you still have, it's a very small section of people out there, but you do have people that are Holocaust deniers today, which I don't know, it blows my mind that anybody could say that with just the mountain of photographic and video evidence that is out there, proving that this stuff happened. Now, I don't know if you caught it, but in the very closing scene of the episode, they talk about Hitler's dead. He committed suicide. On this video, I don't want to get into all that, but think about it. That's very close to the end of the war in Europe. Actually, the official end date, Victory in Europe Day, is going to be May 8th of 1945. Hitler commits suicide about, I think, 7 or 8 days before that. So essentially, the end of that episode is like the end of April 1945. That's kind of wrapping up the war in Europe. Now, there's some more things that I want to throw at you, but I'm already getting kind of long-winded. Anyway, I hope that you found this movie clip I showed today, this scene out of Band of Brothers, I hope you found it enlightening. I hope it gave you a little bit different angle of the Holocaust than maybe what you've seen before. Just trying to put yourself in the shoes of these American soldiers that went through in liberated camps like that. What a shocking and horrific experience that must have been for all those guys. And my heart goes out to everybody involved, the American soldiers, of course, the people that were in the camps, and all those that suffered so badly. But man, I think that's a very powerful lesson, and I hope that you found that movie clip quite impactful and maybe changed your take on the Holocaust a little bit. All right, that's what I got for you today. Make sure you tune into my journal entry, and that's it for today. I'll be back at you or back with you tomorrow with new material.